Again, good morning, everyone. Today's training is going to be covering the FERC Order 881 Track 2 requirements for managing the transmission line ratings pre-market SIM. So we want the goal today is really to prepare you guys for the market SIM, which you're currently involved in right now. So that way you'll be able to understand why we're making these changes, but in the end, you know, there's really three main things that we want you to have as the key takeaway from this training, which is one, to understand the FERC 881 Track 2 requirements. Why are we doing this? And then also reviewing the new transmission line rating application, also known as WebLine R, along with its requirements to get you guys familiar with the new tool. And lastly, we want to prepare you for the market SIM, which you're currently involved in and will continue until June. So I'll cover all those details as we're going through the slides. But really, there's three takeaways from here. Is, again, understand the FERC 881 requirements. 2, learning about the new tool. And then 3, preparing you for the market SIM. So let's go ahead and get started. Just a few housekeeping rules. Please, so to minimize the background noise, if you could keep yourself muted. However, if you have a question you'd like to ask, please feel free to add your questions in the chat or use the interactive hand raise icon. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that Dottie Vance is going to be my producer for today. So if you have any questions, she's going to help facilitate questions as they come in. If you want to send an email to let us know if you need anything else, she'll be able to facilitate in that capacity as well. So, so thank you, Dottie, for being my producer for today. Another thing I do want to provide in the beginning is one of the questions you guys will probably have is, how do I get a hold of this training material and recording? So this one's a little bit different. Whereas we normally post the training in the ISO Training Center page, this one's a little different because it has proprietary information. Similar to WebOMS or WebWheel or CRR, you've probably noticed that in those instances, we've had to send you guys emails of the training and recordings itself, only because we're unable to post that publicly. However, we're working on finding a better way to provide this information more efficiently. So once more information becomes available, we'll send out communication letting you know what other alternative ways you can access this information. But in the meantime, this training is going to be recorded, and the presentation will be emailed to the participant in today's call. If you or your other colleagues are unable to attend today's call, we can send an email. We'll give you all those details at the end of the presentation, but email us and we will forward you the recording along with the presentation. In addition to that, we will be providing you some FAQs. So as questions are coming in by way of city tickets, commenting tools, the user forums such as the release user group, technical user group, market SIM, we're collecting all those questions and we're going to be formalizing, compiling that in a document to share with everyone. So that way, if there's questions that other folks have asked, you won't feel left out. So we'll provide you an FAQ to have as guidance as you're interacting in these tools and learning more about this initiative. So we'll have that available for you as well. Let's go ahead and get started. Oh, also, this meeting is scheduled for an hour and a half, so we want to make sure we covered as much information. If we have enough time at towards the end, I want to see if I can walk you guys, give you guys actually a tutorial within the application itself, in addition to going through the developer page, so that way you know how to navigate in the ISO developer page. So I look forward to that. Now, the agenda for today, we are going to cover the high-level review of the changes, talking about the initiative background, the scope, the impacted customers, the timelines, and the action items that you'll have to take after the training, today's training. Next, we'll talk about the application-specific details. We'll cover the WebLine R application, the new user interface that everyone's heard about. We'll talk about what it is, the access roles, how do you log in, and then also how to use the tools and the available resources. As I mentioned, the developer site and other resources are available for customers. So, and then lastly, we'll wrap it up with the markets and activities. When does it start? When does it end? Is it unstructured, structured? What do you need to test or validate, and how do you submit your inquiry? So that is the gist of today's training. So really to prepare you guys, tell you what's going on, introduce you to the new application, and then help you prepare for the market sim activities. So now let's go ahead and talk about the high-level changes that are happening with the FERC 881 Track 2. So back in 2021, FERC issued a mandate for us to come up with a way to help our customers manage the transmission line ratings. And this requirement will is directed to the CAISO to be able to introduce to our transmission providers or transmission owners and whatnot, so that way, introduce this new change so that way we can make these updates within our process as a way to expand the existing transmission line rating activities. The reform changes essentially tells us to make sure that we expand the capabilities of the current transmission system so that way we can adjust the line ratings on an hourly basis, in addition to introducing a new transmission line rating user interface, like I mentioned, WebLine R. This is going to help with the facilitation of the collection, the maintenance, and distribution of those ratings. The transmission providers must implement the ambient adjusted ratings on the transmission line that they provide service for, in addition to requiring the ISO and RTO to use the AAR's ambient adjusted ratings in their congestion management process, the look ahead, and also when they're evaluating and curtailing the near-term transmission services. Now, the next question is, who does these reform changes, these mandates impact? Well, it impacts quite a number of entities. They impact the California ISO balancing authorities, the BA, transmission operators, the TOPs, the WEIM, which is the Western Energy Imbalance entities that are participating, TOPs, and the adjacent reliability coordinators in the adjacent RCs, the Reliability Coordinator RC Transmission Operator, TOP, and the adjacent RC. So it impacts quite a number of folks that are involved in this process. And so we want to make sure that our customers are aware of these changes, and as we're going through the slide, you'll be able to understand what these requirements are. Now, I want to touch on the initiative timeline just briefly. As I mentioned earlier, FERC ordered an issue back in 2021. Since then, there's been several discussions going back and forth with our customers, really trying to understand what these changes are and to get feedback from our customers. So if you're ever interested in the policy initiative page, there are those conversations, those questions, presentations, just recordings of all the initial policy-related information in our policy initiative page. So if you're interested in learning more about the background, what's transpired since then, feel free to access that information. I've provided a link here at the bottom of the page for the policy initiative page. In addition to the changes that are happening, last year we published the BRS for Track 2. Prior to that was the BRS for Track 1. So if you get a chance and would like to know a little bit more about what these requirements entail, feel free to check out the BRS. I do have a link to the BRS. Bobby, thank you so much for including those links on there as well. So take a look at those when you have some time to learn a little bit more about what this entails. Today, we're here for the external training. We're going to cover, like I said, we're going to cover more information on this new tool that you guys have been exploring. Some of you have already been provisioned for this new user interface. So now, you know, you've got a chance to really connect to the tool, but what do you do next? That's what we're going to do today, is share with you those details on what to do now that you have connected to this new application. After that, We'll talk a little bit more about the market sim. As I mentioned earlier, market sim is already open as of January, and it's going to continue to go on until June. Right now, the focus more is on establishing the connectivity. You've probably been involved in some of those discussions in the release user group, the RUG, the TUG, technical user group, and the market sim forums. So a lot of conversations have happened. Now, now you've been, you have the ability to connect to the application. So there's going to be some more information provided at the end to tell you what you need to do if you haven't already started those validation process in the new application. And then lastly, the go live date, we're anticipating June 2025. We'll send you the definitive dates as we get closer to that timeline. The requirement is for us to be able to comply with FERC before July 12th, 2025, but we're going to try to see if we can implement this Track 2 initiative prior to then. And so more information will be provided in those forums in addition to an announcement via email, so you'll get more updates as you go. Also, it's really depending on the market sim and the testing as we're working with the customers to really identify the changes as we're going through this process. Let's go ahead and move on to next. So today's current practice, right now the ISO is only using the seasonal transmission line ratings, which often results in the unused transmission capacity. So we're really limiting ourselves. In addition to that, we're only using 2 seasons, which is summer and winter, right? So we want to improve that. So the next thing we're going to do as a result of that is really to use the ambient adjusted rating, establishing uses ambient adjusted ratings and seasonal ratings for all transmission lines. The RTOs and the ISOs, regional transmission owners, and the ISO must, implement the system to allow transmission owner to be able to electronically update the transmission lines at least an hourly into this system. Also, we want to make sure that we're transparent in our process as we're developing these changes. We also want to determine emergency ratings for contingency analysis, in addition to opening or allowing the system to use 4 seasons as opposed to 2. So now we'll be able to capture the summer, winter, spring, and fall, whereas previously mentioned we only were using 2 seasons. Now, within this initiative, we have 3 different tracks. Earlier, we covered track 1. It essentially covered the, it required us to update some internal processes, application, and whatnot, in addition to RIMs externally. So there were some conversations and implementations that occurred as part of track 1. Today, we're focusing on track 2, where we're updating our EMS and full network model process, in addition to implementing the ambient adjusted rating, the AAR submissions and validations, along with the seasonal rating submissions and validations, and then also introducing a new user interface, which is the WebLine R, and how this information will be incorporated into this new tool that we have provided. And then later on, we'll be continuing with this effort for track 3. I would suggest following the policy initiatives page as these changes are progressing within the track 3 phase. So for now, our focus in today's call is really on track 2. And again, if you would like to learn a little bit more about what's going on in track 2 and then anything else thereafter, definitely check out our policy initiatives page. And then also we have the business requirement specification document, which is the BRS, that's currently posted on our external page. Another thing we have is we're going to be introducing some new terminologies. You probably heard me mention the ambient adjusted rating, the AARs. So transmissions are expected to generate every hour based on the temperature forecast. And then you're also here in the WebLine R, you'll see the best available, which is the BAV, best available. This is for coordinated facilities. So that way, when you're in the system, you'll see that this terminology comes up often in the system as you're navigating through the system. So I just wanted to provide some new terminologies. You'll see this, like I said, within the application itself. So in the end, or at the end of the slide, you'll also have a list of glossaries with more terminologies on there to really help you understand what the definition of these terminologies are. So I'm going to pause right here. I know there's a lot of information that I covered with respect to the why we're doing this, and also some of the timelines and requirements. So I want to pause right here to see if anyone has any questions so far with what we covered earlier. Dottie, can you check to see if we have any questions?
Of course. So I'm looking right now, Mo, and I don't see any hands raised, but I did just see a question coming from Luke. It says, what exactly is going live in June 2025?
Great question, Luke. So the implementation of the WebLine R application. So into production, the WebLine R, as mentioned, folks are currently participating in the map stage environment. This new transmission line rating user interface is going to go live in production in June 2025. So along with all the other requirements associated to FERC AA1 Track 2. So does that answer your question? And you can add your response in the chat. Perfect, awesome. So, but yes, great question. And then I really encourage you guys to ask more questions. I have a list of SMEs that are attending today's call. So if there's something too complex or something you're just curious about, feel free to add your questions in the chat, or just use the hand raise icon and just verbalize your question. Or even if you want, you can also email us and we'll provide you those details later on, and we can make sure we get you those answers and share it with everyone on today's call. As I mentioned, we will have a FAQ to provide you guys, so that way we'll continue to update those, update the document, so that way by the time you get to June 2025, you'll have most of your questions answered, and as new folks come on board, you'll always have this document to reference to, so that way you don't have to feel that you have to ask the question over and over. But we want to make sure you guys are prepared for when we do go live.
Perfect, Mo. So I think that encouragement had another hand raised. So Nadia, you can please come off mute and just state your name, your organization, and your question.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Hi, Nadia.
Perfect. Hi, good morning. My name is Nadia Krams with Pacific Core. I just had a general question. I believe in a past meeting, I heard that there might be some filing with FERC asking for an extension on this initiative. Was that correct, or was that on a future track? Just want to get more clarity there.
That is correct. I'm going to see if I have a SME, one of my SMEs on the line to see if they can expand. And yes, you're correct. There are some discussions about the extension. So let me see if I can find someone in my SME pool to see if they can help answer that.
Okay, thank you.
And Mo, I can take that and work with the SME, and we can follow up here in just a moment.
Okay,
I see
perfect.
that we also have another question in the chat from Gary. Is it for all BES lines and to have the AAR applied, or can the TOP come up with a selection of lines to apply the AAR?
That's a great question. Let's add that to the pool as well. Can I have one of my SMEs speak on that just to clarify? Maybe Trevor, maybe Sirajul. And if we don't have the answer right now, we can also get back to you, but we'll definitely share the answer. So it may take some time to gather up the response, but we'll definitely share. So Gary, great questions, and we'll get back to you, or we're having our SMEs right now review it as well. So thank you for that, Gary. And Shashi, I see that you provided a link to the to the tariff extension timeline. So thank you so much for that, Shashi. Appreciate it. So if you guys want to take a look at that link, Nadia, you mentioned earlier you were inquiring about that. So definitely check out the link that Shashi shared in the chat as well. Okay. Any other questions so far?
Not at this time.
Right.
No. I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Dottie. And I love, oh, we got one more. Tanisha? Tanisha, let's see, your question was, what is the extent that impacts the WM entities that are not in the CAISO BA? So for the WM entities, from what I recall, and I would like one of our SMEs to follow up on this, is that if you need to submit your rating, your information in the WebLiner application, I understand that you have to, and if you're not a RC, you would have to coordinate with your RC to submit your information through the RIMS, the resource in the RIMS application. So that for I guess what I'm trying to say, it's actually, you know what, I do have an answer for you. I do have a slide later on that covers what it is that you'll need to be able to do. So let me hold off on that, Tanisha, and there's a slide later on that really that might help in that space. So, but Dottie, in the meantime, if you can facilitate that to our SME chat group to see if they might have an update, and then we'll come back to that. So, but yes, Tanisha, we do have an answer for you.
Perfect. I can definitely do that, Mo. And I do see one more hand raised from Felda, if you wanted to come off mute and ask your question.
Yes, hi. Good morning. This is Felda Chen with PG&E. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All
Yes.
right, great. I heard earlier that in June 2025, WebLiner will be going live in production. And if I could confirm, by that definition, does that mean that the WebLiner will be able to receive as well as sending out the ratings?
That is the intent, yes.
I see. Okay, so by June 2025, WebLiner should be able to be fully functional, as in able to receive and able to send out the ratings back to market participants. Thank you.
That is correct. No, thank you. Great question. Great question. I'm loving the question, so please feel free to ask as many questions. And as I mentioned, if we don't have the answer immediately, we can still reach out to our group and prepare a response for you guys and share it with everyone. So please keep those questions coming. This is a great platform for you guys to ask these questions in addition to the user forum. So we want to hear from you guys as we're preparing for the production implementation. So, all right.
And Mo,
go ahead.
we do have one more hand. We do have one more hand raised from Ali. Ali, if you want to come off mute and ask your question.
This is Ali Amirali with DCRT. Probably I'm going to get the dumb question of the day out of the way. How are you going to adjust the network model with hourly rating changes?
Great question. Dottie, let me see if we can get our SMEs to speak on that. Hang in there real quick. Can I, Tricia, maybe
I can help, Ali. This is Surajal.
Thank you, Surajal.
Ali, when the real-time ratings comes in to EMS, right, it will be transmitted to the reliability applications. So we do have a mechanism to transfer hourly ratings as the ratings changes, to update all our downstream application, if that is what you're asking.
Yes, Rajal, thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Surajal. We have one more question from Vijay. Will there be more information on who to reach out to starting the WebLiner submission testing? What is the process? So we will be, Vijay, so that's so that's something we will be walking through later in the slide. So I'm looking forward to sharing the webinar. As I mentioned, this training more so is focusing on this new user interface. So I want to make sure that a lot of the questions are going to be specific to the webinar application. But I know that we have the policy initiative page that continues to cover that platform. If there's something with respect to more on the technical side, revolving the changes, whatnot, we do have folks that can answer those questions in this call. And I just want to emphasize that the focus of today's call really is to get you guys geared, get you guys prepared for this new Webline R application. But I really do love the questions as they're coming in. Keep them coming, and if it's something that we need to provide a response to later on, or just discuss with our SMEs to be able to update the existing slide, we'll definitely do that. So thank you for that. And ARQ, yes, there's going to be a demo version of the Webline R. So once we go through those slides regarding the Webline R screens, we'll see if we can jump onto the actual application and really just walk through it, and then you guys could kind of see in real time what the application looks like if you haven't had access to it yet. So yes. All right. Any other questions so far, Dottie?
I only see Ali's hand still raised. I'm not sure if that's from the previous question that you asked.
Hi, my name is Ali.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hey, Monica. I just hear that you mentioned that instead of 2 seasons like winter and summer, the new submission is going to be for 4 seasons. Also, I just hear that in Webline R, the submission is going to be on hourly basis, right? So what exactly
Correct.
between these two submissions? What's the difference between these two submissions? I mean, the hourly one and the seasonal one.
The hourly and forgive me, the hourly and what was the last one?
The one that the slide that you mentioned is going to be for 4 seasons transmission line rating submission.
For seasonal, okay. So Roger, can you help expand in that space? Can you help clarify in that space, if I can get you?
Sure. The seasonal ratings we normally have will continue having what we have today, right? You submit through the models, and we incorporate winter and summer, and we do the switching in April 1st and November 1st, right? We do this mechanism with it comes with a model, comes through the RC website, entry point, you give us in what the season definitions are, start time, end time, and we do the switching. So the same mechanism on the modeling side, that instead of 2 seasons, there will be 4 season capabilities that will be incorporating for all TOPs. So that is on the modeling side. In Webliner, you can further, because we have 6 model a year. So in the real time, in Webliner, using Webliner portal, you can still make the change. You don't have to wait for next model to be updated, right? So the frequency of update, you have the capabilities and flexibilities. You don't have to wait for next model to update your seasonal ratings with all 4 seasons. So Webliner give you a faster real-time update every hourly, if that helps.
So, right now in the EIM market, we do have in BayUp software, we do have a screen that just updated based on those 2 submissions of winter and summer transmission rating. When we switch to the new submission based on the hourly one, is it going to be affected the EIM software? Based on the hourly one, or still go with the seasonal one?
Well, that's why that is the track 3, right? So whenever we get updated, it should be used across all the applications, right? Since the market is extremely complex and the run horizons are pretty complicated, with the day ahead to the real time, right? Different run times. So it will be done in next year time frame, right? So we are hoping that in 2026, that market application, which will be track 3, I'm pretty sure there'll be different training for track 3. So this one is only on track 2, which market application will not be using the forecasted ratings. But yes, you are right. Eventually, we'll get there. All market application will be using the latest and greatest rating from WebLiner.
Okay, so for track 2, we're still going with what, with the old submission, right? The seasonal one.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Surajo, and thank you, Ali, for the question. Is there any other questions, Nadia? I do see that, we do have some questions that were coming in. And as a reminder, this presentation, along with the updated questions that are coming in today, and the recordings, in addition to the FAQ, will be emailed to you guys within 3 business days. We want to make sure we incorporate any questions that came up to provide some clarification. So your questions are very helpful. But also, just a reminder, some of the questions that I'm also hearing is related to track 3. And again, we want to save those questions when we do the next training for track 3, which are great to ask now, so we'll capture those for later on. But for track 2, we do want to be able to kind of make sure we focus on what's going to happen in track 2 as of today, because this is what we want to focus on now. And then as track 3 gets developed and more information comes in, we'll be able to give you more accurate information, and we'll be sure to transfer the information that came from today's call onto that training space as well. And I would really like to reach out to those participants, you guys actually, to be able to collect those questions as we'll be preparing for training for track 3. So again, let's come back to track 2 and see if we can get you guys ready for the new application. So, but definitely provide your questions, and if you want to email those questions that are related to track 3 to us, please do, because we want those questions so we could be better prepared when we do the training for track 3. But great questions that are coming in. All right.
And Emma, we do have one more question if we have time for it.
Absolutely.
Or we can keep. Okay, perfect. Lee, I see that your hand's raised if you want to come off mute and ask your question.
Good morning. This is Lee Zhang from Calpine Corporation. Could I ask you for those rating changes, all those things? What's your plan for posting this rating in the future, or maybe even flow? Is this track 3 question or track 2? I'm not sure, but would like you to comment on that. Thanks.
Surajo, if you can help in that space, that would be great.
Actually, I could help. So for entities that have a CAISO certificate, so if you are a market participant in the CAISO area and you have a CAISO certificate, then you will have access. I think it's to a secure site, and I think we have to finalize the requirements on whether it's a WebLiner secure site or some other secure site, but to be able to access those ratings. For the other WEIM areas for those facilities, if the balancing authorities and transmission operators, everybody will have access through WebLiner to be able to see each other's ratings at the BATOP kind of RC level. But for the market participant level, you'll need to access through your BA or TOPC or, transmission service provider, through the mechanisms that they're making those ratings available for their areas.
Yeah, a comment. Right now we use certificate, right? Through portal we can see the ratings. But now it will be more frequent update. So one is forward, but more question will be, do you publish historical hourly ratings in the future? Thanks.
Yes, I think that those would also be available, but yeah, through a secure site.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee, and thank you, Tricia. I saw that we have another question from Daryl Holmes. Daryl, we're actually, we've passed on that question to our SME, so they're reviewing it, and then Dottie will be providing an answer in the chat very shortly. So, but yes, great question, Daryl, and again, Tricia and Lee, thank you for that update. So all right, guys, we are at 9:38. Let's go on and move on to the next. And as your questions are coming, Dottie, my producer, will continue to monitor the chat so that we make sure all your questions are answered. And again, they'll be shared later after the training. So, all right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So now let's talk about WebLine R, right? This is what we've been waiting for, is to really get into the weeds of WebLine R. What is it? How do you get access? How do you log into WebLine R? Later we'll do the walkthrough, but we're going to go over some of the screens just to give you an idea as to what you're working with, and then also, you know, how do you submit information to WebLine R, and then also lastly, where you can find the user interface and API documentation. Again, the user forums that we've had, that we have out there, have been covering over a lot of this information, but we want to emphasize this in the training. So let's go ahead and get started. So what is WebLine R? WebLine R is this new transmission line rating user interface that we've created to really help our customers, you guys, to be able to maintain the transmission line rating, and then also for us to comply with FERC 881. This user interface is going to receive AAR, the ambient adjusted ratings, from the transmission owners that own the transmission facilities. And essentially, it's going to be the new tool that we use to incorporate a lot of the information and also be able to send out information to our downstream systems from this tool. So this WebLine R is, again, a new application, so that way we can be able to fulfill those requirements as mandated by FERC 881. Okay. So now let's talk about the access roles for the UAAs. Just a show of hands in this call, can you let me know if you are a UAA, a user access administrator? Because if you are, I really want to focus this section right here on the UAA, so that way you'll know how to provision your users access. And if your UAAs are not in today's call, that's okay, because we'll make sure that we get this information shared and that you can share with your UAAs, the folks that manages your certificates for your organizations, because we want to make sure that when they're provisioning access for your users, that they know which roles based on your org type to be able to provision. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, here is a matrix of to really help you identify what roles to select for your users based on your participation, your org type, and then also letting you know what kind of data you'll see. You'll be able to determine if your users can have read-write access or read access only. And then also on the roles right here, the last column or the second to the last column tells you, what roles in AIM, the application identity management tool that your UAAs are using to provision your user access. So if you fall into these categories, just look across the table and see what roles you have, and then you'll be able to identify what your involvement is. Tanisha, you asked a question earlier about, the involvement with the WM entities. I know we provided a response for you earlier, but on this matrix right here really tells you where you fall into the category, in terms of how to get access and what you'll be able to see in the WebLine R tool. So let me go ahead and go to the next. In the application identity management tool, AIM, you'll notice that you as a UAA or your UAAs will have the option to select from 3 different roles depending on your participation. So and also depending on your contract type, what your UAAs, or you should say your organization, have been assigned for your contract type. The contract type determines what applications and roles you can have access to, your organization can have access to. So I believe there was a question that came up that asked if an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, was required in order to get access to WebLine R. The answer is no. It really is dependent on the contract that you've established we've established with your organization that will determine if your organization can have access to this application, and if so, what roles you have. So no NDA, but the contract within the AIM application is what is needed. So if you, earlier I showed the matrix. This last external CAISO equipment read-only role right here is specific to the CAISO BA market participants. This is where in the application you're only going to be able to see two of the tabs, which we'll cover later on. Basically, you'll be able to view the equipment and rating data, but you won't be able to see the dashboard, and I'll cover that later on. But for the CAISO BA, they're the only ones that will that can request for the external CAISO equipment read-only. And this right here, as mentioned, it says, provides entities with the ability to view CAISO-only entity submitted rating detail, resource information. Also, one thing I do want to emphasize is that if you're requesting this specific role for the third one right here, make sure you do not request for the external read-write or read-only access. It will conflict with the role you have, and you may run into some issues trying to access the application. So make sure if you fall into this category, the last one right here, make sure you're only requesting for this role for your user, and do not request for the external read-write or read-only, because it will conflict with your access to the application. And as I mentioned earlier, just coordinate with your UAA so that way you can obtain access to this application. Right now, as we're in the middle of markets, and I encourage you guys to go and request for this application, so that way after this training you'll know what to do, and you'll also be able to confirm that you've established connectivity with the application. And if you run into issues, we want to hear about that, then submit a city ticket, and so we'll make sure we get our folks to help resolve those connection issues. Okay. Any questions so far on the access roles or anything of that sort? I just want to pause real quick just to make sure.
No, I don't see any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Dottie, and thank you for posting the link to the UAA information. All right, now let's talk about the login for WebLine R. So some of you have already established access to the WebLine R application. Most likely you would have received the direct link for the map stage environment. Again, this training is focusing on map stage at this time. The production UI URL won't be available until later as we get close to June. For now, the focus is going to be in the map stage environment. So I want to make sure that if you need to, once you've established access and you need to be able to access the application, I want to make sure I tell you where to go to find the links. In this case, I've listed 5 different sources. Again, here's the direct URL for the UI map stage environment. You can also go to the ISO developer site where you can follow this path from here, go to the apps, WebLine R, and then click on the View UI Environments button or option, and then it'll open up a page that gives you the direct, that gives you the map stage UI URL. Later this week or next week, we're hoping to get these UI URLs posted on our Mark Participant portal page. Normally, you guys would go onto those portal pages to click on the icon to access the application. So we're currently working on getting that information for the map stage environment posted, in addition to the RC portal and the WEIM portal. So, so when you do need to access those, you'll be able to go to those portal pages and click on the icon to access the application from there. I'll send a notice once those icons URLs are available. In the meantime, you have access to the direct URL, and you can also access it in the ISO developer page. Once you get access, once you click onto those click onto the application, you'll see this page right here. It's our F5 page where you just go in and you just click the map stage webliner option, okay? And then once you get in, this is the main page that you'll see for the external read-write, read-only folks that have that role. You'll be able to see 3 different tabs on here, menu tabs, the data, the ratings, and the dashboard. Here are the screens that fall under each of those tabs. For the data, for the rating has a sub-tab for the seasonal rating, active, pending, and delayed. And then there's the dashboard that contains the ratings analytic. This is where you'll be able to go in and view the graphics that come along. They're associated to these items over here. So again, if you have the external read-write or read-only role, you'll be able to see the 3 different tabs. And then for those that have the external KISO equipment read-only role, you only see 2 tabs in here, and these are the information you'll see. Now let's move on to the API. I mentioned earlier that you can access this information in the ISO developer page. If you don't already have access to the ISO developer page, you just need to go into that URL and create an account. You just need to register an account so that way you can go into the developer page and access the API information. So once you're in there, you're going to be able to see, as I mentioned earlier, there's the view UI environments. This right now currently has the map stage URL. You'll see the mock service. You'll see the mock service information on here, and then the RESTful services, which is down here for the facility ratings. You'll be able to see the YAML files in addition to the documentation. If you click on the links here, it'll take you to another page, so that way you can see the B2B open API specification documents for the facilities and ratings. After that, you will also be able to, actually, here's a list of all the different queries that you can use. This information, again, is covered in the RUG and the TUG presentation. So we want to make sure we socialize this and make sure that you guys have all the information you need as you're getting ready to establish your APIs. I believe the APIs will not be available or will not be provided until mid-April. So more information that will be communicated in those user forums. So when they do become available, but in the meantime, please definitely start configuring your files in preparation for the API. And then prior to that, definitely make sure that you establish connectivity in the WebLiner application, user interfacing application. So any questions so far with respect to how to log in and log into the UI and how to log into the API?
No, so I'm looking, I did see one hand get in the air from Sashi. If you want to please say your name, your organization, and your question.
Yeah, I got 2 questions. First one, I do have access to WebLiner, but I don't see any records yet. And I can navigate between different tabs there, ratings, facilities, but no records are there, meaning that no data, right? Maybe you guys are still working on it, or it might be the permission issue. And second, on the timeline again, right? I know that you guys have filed extension, and there are various extensions looking at that document, right? For AAR, as a TOP 2026 December. If you are in a market tariff related, it's even 27, 28 for some other. So while developing your application WebLiner, are you expecting us to be ready with API data exchange by July 2025, or are we shooting for requested extension timeline?
Sashi, thank you so much for those questions. I believe, to answer your first question, yes, I know we're working, you and I are working on the WebLine-R application. I know at first it was establishing the connection, which we were able to resolve. Now the next thing is for you to be able to see the data set in WebLine-R. Let's work offline, you and I work offline, because I know that there's something I do want to troubleshoot. I want to check to see if there's maybe something to do with a filter or whatnot, but I've already included my IT person to see if we can help troubleshoot that issue. So if anyone else comes across that issue where you're able to get into the UI but are not seeing data, I want you guys to let us know, submit a city ticket, and let us know if that's the same issue that you're encountering, where you can get into the UI but are not seeing any data set in there. So Shashi, you and I will definitely connect after this, because I want to see if it's a filter that's on there, but also really find out why you're not able to see the data. One thing I do want to highlight is that with WebLine-R, you're able to see everyone's information, whereas before, folks can only see their information. That's what's great about the WebLine-R application, is that you see what other folks are seeing. The only difference is that you can only update your rating information as opposed to others. You can see everyone's, but you can only update your information. So Sashi, let's connect afterwards and see why it's not allowing you to see all the other data sets that are in there. Now, your next question regarding the extension in terms of if you have to be ready for the API before June 2025, and being that there are some discussions about some extension, I want to consult with my SMEs to see if that's going to impact the API. I know that we will provide the API information around the April timeline, but I need to confirm with my SMEs is the expectation for you guys to have everything ready for the API configured before the June 2025. I'm going to put that out to my SMEs if that is, or to my SMEs to see if that is the case where you need to have your API completed before then, or does it tie into the extension that they're working on? One moment. Let me see if I can get one of my SMEs. Nalini, can I have you confirm in that space for the API, or anybody else from the team, to see if they need to have the API developed before 2025 to start using that methodology? I'm going to pause right there.
Hey Mo, Nalini here. So as far as I understand, the market sim is going to be for UI as well as the API, beginning in, again, we're targeting April for that. So the expectation is that we have folks have them ready, but I think I would use the phrase adopt when ready. So as soon as you guys are ready, you can start testing. It will be available beginning beginning April. And you can start testing it as soon as you guys are ready.
Thank you, Nalini. Sashi, does that answer your question?
So can I elaborate on that just a little bit?
Absolutely.
Okay. So when it comes to production, which I think may be the nature of the question that we received, we do plan on making the WebLine-R UI and API available in production in June of 2025. So as far as you're opting in to use the UI or the API, that is up to your organization. Both methods will be available, and it's up to your organization if you want to use the UI or the API. So adding on to what Nalini said is that you can start by using the UI when it's available in June, and then give yourself more time to adopt when ready the APIs, because those will continue to be in that stage. And if you need additional development effort on your side to configure your access to the APIs, you can continue to do that and then just move those into production on your side when you're ready and utilize that API when available. So to answer the question is no, there's not a hard requirement for you to be ready for the APIs in production in June of 2025.
Thank you, Train.
Yeah, thank you very much. That clarifies the question there. Thank you very much again.
And we'll also update the slide to make sure we emphasize that really is at your discretion. The content or the requirements will be made available for you guys to test. And then, as Trang mentioned, you know, once we go into production, if you guys feel you guys are ready to implement those changes and use those methodologies in production, it's really at your organization's discretion. So, but yes, thank you so much, Trang and Shashi, great questions. And yes, you and I will connect afterwards to see if we can help get that issue resolved later. And then if anyone else runs into the same issue, submit a city ticket so we can get you guys taken care of as well. Dottie, are there any other questions so far?
No. Currently, there's no other questions at this time, so I'll pass it back to you.
All right, thank you. I know we're at 9:58, and I want to make sure we go through this so we can get you guys maybe some demo time of the application, and then also talk about the readiness activities for the market sim. So let's go ahead and dive into the WebLine-R application. So as I mentioned earlier, there are 3 different tabs on the main screen. The first one is the data tab. So when you go into the screen, when you click on the data tab, you're going to see one of the screens under the data tab is the facilities display. So here you'll be able to see all the information. Shashi, I know you mentioned that when you clicked on here, you weren't able to see all the details listed on here. So that maybe could be a filter issue, but we'll have to look in that to see what else is preventing you from seeing the data. But essentially, you'll be able to log in here. You'll see everyone else's data. The only thing is you just cannot submit data for another organization, but you'll be able to have access to their information. Here we have the same facility screen, but in the filtering option, you'll notice that for the equipment type, I want to emphasize this, you can only submit and filter data for the these 3 items right here, the AC line segment, power transformer, series compensator. So these are the 3 items for the equipment type that you'll be able to submit changes for. Here we have the filter option. I wanted to just give you an example of what your filters are. You'll notice the, like for instance, the prefix right in each of those fields, a little squiggly line, that is the contain symbol, so that's defaulted on there, and you can change your filtering option to, there's other filter options that you can use as well, contain, equals, whatnot, and we'll share those options with you later at the end of the slides. Or we'll update it onto the presentation for later so that way you guys have something to reference. But this is your filtering option. You click on that filter option, it'll give you these selections right here. Similar to what you're kind of using if you're a WebOMS user, it looks somewhat similar because it is from the same vendor, but slightly different. So some of the functionalities you see on here may be similar, but there's some slight differences as well. Here you have another option to click on this section right here, so you can do your filter kind of in a way an inline filter where you can filter for resources using this row right here, or you can click on the filter icon to see that display earlier. For the AAR ambient adjusted rating screen, you'll be able to go in here. There are some options in here. There's some information in here that you can click. There's hyperlinks that you can click, which will take you to that open up other windows for you to view, and we'll go through that when we do the demo so you can see some of that. Again, here, if you want to enter a new, if you want to add a new entry, just click on the new icon right here, and then you just add your new entries right here and save it. You can modify your information. And I'm going to go through these fairly quickly because a lot of the information on here are pretty self-explanatory, and then we'll also want to be able to spend some more time on doing the demo so we can actually see it in real time. But I wanted to give you guys some screenshots here so that way it's something for you to reference back to if you have questions later on. So we're just going to breeze on through some of these screens. Same concept. You know, you're basically going to be able to submit your information, and then you're going to be able to query, modify, and export your data from here. One thing I do want to call out, and this will be later on, and I'll let you know which slide it is, but the great thing about this tool is that if you need to submit information, you can actually export the information from this tool. There's an export option at the bottom in one of the slides, which I'll point out later on. where you can click that export. It'll pre-populate the information that's already listed in this tool, and then you take that and you resubmit it back in. So really, you don't have to create a new template. There's a template in this application that allows you to export your information, update those changes that you want to make, and then resubmit into the application, and it gets updated instantaneously. So that's one great thing about this, is that you don't have to create a template from scratch to go somewhere else to pull a template to be able to update the information that's allotted in this application. You can just export it, populate information right in there, and just make your changes, upload it, and it uploads it in real time. All right, so on this screen right here, basically the same thing, talks about the filter option for the AAR exempt facilities. There's also the computational method summary screen. Again, these are one of the screens listed under the data tab. Just going to go through them real quick. You'll notice that, again, there's links on there. You click on the hyperlinks, it'll take you to different views. And you can modify, similar to what you do with other applications used in the past, you can also modify the different rows you see in the screen. Here, again, this is just an entry screen. If you want to add a new computational method summary, you can add use a new icon, use the filter, and use the export. So just going to go ahead and go through this. And if you want to see your recent changes, there is an option on the right side, and I'll go through that as we're going through the screen, where you, let's see if I can go here. On this far left side, it'll say recent changes. You can click on the little arrow right there that allows you to expand the window so you can see your recent changes. But and this is what it would look like. So if there's something you changed recently, you want to see what was done, you can click on the arrow that's located on the right side, identifies recent changes. You see this graphic in the middle, and then you can see what those changes are. Again, each slide has a description of what the screen requirements are. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue to go through, because I want to make sure that we have more time to actually dive into the application. The 4 seasons that we mentioned earlier, you've got the summer, winter, spring, and fall. This is listed under the data tab. Whereas before we had only 2 seasons, now you can submit information for 4 different seasons now. Okay. Earlier I mentioned that there's a location or templates that you can use. Here's one of the examples right here at the bottom of the page, where you can export, click the export button to export the data. And then once you export the data, make your changes, and then you go and click the import AAR rating, which will allow you to submit the information back into the system for only the ones that you ones that you own. So the buttons are located in the bottom. You can export and you can upload. Templates already built into the system. Okay. I'm going to go through the ratings tab real quickly. Earlier I mentioned that if you click on some of the tabs or some of the hyperlinks, in this case, if you click on facility attributes, you'll be able to see this window that tells you about the facility. It tells you if it's a shared facility, and then also it gives you the N specific attributes where you can compare the two right here, the N1, N2. Here, if you click on the where it says view, you click on the chart graphic. It'll allow you to open up a graphic. You click on anywhere in the line, it'll tell you what the rating value is. So as you're moving through any of the graphics are here, click anywhere in there and it will tell you for that point in time. I'll tell you what the rating value is. And again, you have the option to do filtering, so you can query for the data that you're hoping to focus on. And then you've got the component rating profiles. And then you have the chart right here. Basically, one great thing about this also is you can modify, at the bottom in the light blue, you can modify your date range. So if you pull in or minimize or expand the date range, you can customize the graphic view. So based on the time frame that you want to focus on, or if you want to see the full duration, so you have that flexibility to do that. Here we have the component rating profiles, or if you're viewing the data, you can filter, you can basically pull up information by clicking on the link. If you click on the link, it'll open up another tab to show you the details specific to that facility. Similar to what we saw before, just different screen. Again, it tells you if it's a shared facility and also details about the attributes. So there's a lot of information that's covered in this webline R. Depending on what it is you're looking for, is the tab that you'll go to make sure that you can focus on. So again, these are just profile IDs. You click on the composite profile ID, it'll give you information on their facility rating details. All the information is visible here. So the hyperlinks are very useful to have, so that way you can expand, you can pull up more details on that specific record. And they'll just show up either in a graph form or a table with all the additional details. Here, I do want to focus on this composite profile graphic where there is a different color scheme. So here you see there's the blue line, and then there's a black line on here. An example, the blue lines indicate the overrides, and then the black lines represent the AARs, and together they form the composite profile. So basically, you'll be able to identify the different values based on the color scheme. Okay, and again, rating, overrides, and exception. These are just one of the many different screens that are in this application. You'll be able to go in and explore the application a little more after this training, but this right here will serve as a guide for you to understand what the expectation is in each of those screens. So again, you can add, modify, filter, a lot of repetitive functionalities in each of those screens. Let's see, we'll just keep going. Here's another screen I do want to focus on as well. Here we have the, if you want to modify the new rating value, if the column is in green, it means that you can modify the values in Webline R. So if you see the green shade in the back, that means you can modify the information. So in this case, for the new rating value, I do want to emphasize that any value that you update on here will be updated in Webline R immediately. It will flow into our downstream system and be reflected instantaneously. However, for the new rating duration, that's a little different, because if you make the changes here, it's not going to be implemented immediately, because again, this is a change that that requires some mitigation and will need to be reviewed and updated in the full network model process. So changes here will not be reflected immediately, because it does need to go through a review, because this is something that will impact the transmission line rating and will need to be reviewed by our internal folks and also vetted through the full network model process. So this does go down, does get processed downstream, but it will need to be reviewed first and go through the proper process. But as I mentioned, the new rating value, make the changes there, it gets implemented immediately. It's just that if you're going to change the rating duration, that one's going to take some time, because it does need to go through the full network model process. I do want to emphasize that. Okay. And again, more filtering option. Just wanted to give you guys some screenshots so you'll know what to anticipate when you do go into these screens. Again, these screens are all under the rating tab, and descriptions are there. Now we're moving on to the dashboard tab. So those that have, as I mentioned earlier, the other row, which is, as I mentioned earlier, is only available to the CAISO BAA. You do not have access to this dashboard tab, but you do have access to the data and rating tab, but not to this one. This is for the RCs, the WAN. Oh, hello? Did someone have a question? That's okay. It was inadvertently unmuted. But yeah, if you have a question, definitely feel free to add it to the chat. But let's go ahead and move on. So as I mentioned, this screen is not available for those that have the that specific role that I mentioned earlier. Okay. So again, this screen right here covers a lot of the graphical forms. I mentioned you can modify custom the screen. You can change the color scheme, how you want those graphs to be detailed visually. A lot of, you can click on the different points on there to see the exception, the override, the AAR, so just what those values are at that point in time. Okay, more graphic examples. And then just a reminder, there's two ways that you can submit your information. You can submit it through the user interface, and you can also submit it through the API. And the API, as Trang and team mentioned earlier, will be available for you guys to configure by mid-March, mid-April this year. And as far as the implementation of the WebLineR in production will be slated for June 2025. Also, just a visual, just to kind of help you understand how when your information gets submitted into the application, if you submit your ambient adjusted rating, you can submit it by way of the API or CSV by uploading it into the system, within the system. Your exception override, same thing, API, UI. Your seasonal, you have to follow the process, the CIM, and that's through the full network model process, and then you can also submit it by way of API, CSV, or the user interface. So you have different options. This is really helping you to understand when you submit these data sets, these are the available methods that you can submit your information. Okay, I'm going to go through the market sim real quick. I know we've got less than 15 minutes, but I want to go through the market sim requirements, but then I want to jump onto the application so you guys can see in real time what it is. So market sim scenarios are available in the business, BRS, and there are 6 in total. So the market sim essentially is open now. We encourage you to go in and start validating this information. Once you establish access, go into the application, work with your UAs to get access. But there are 6 different unstructured scenarios. And here is where we want you to go ahead and test the ability to submit. For those that have the right access, we want you to go in and submit the changes within the application. And then we also want you to be able to go in and view and retrieve information, so use the export feature via the UI. API will be later on, but for now, for the UI, we also want you to be able to modify your information, see if you're able to modify just the organization for the ones that you have. The ones that belong to you, you can modify that information. Others you can't modify for other folks, but you can see their data. We also want you to test out the filter capability, see if you can retrieve information based on the filter option. And then also be able to submit an override to validate your validate file, but using the override functionality. And then also see if you can correct some of the error validations. But there's, I believe, in the BRS, there's more information specific to the BRQ that gives you a little bit more time, or a little bit more detail on what it is you need to do for this scenario, number 6. So look at BRQ 154A and BRQ 154B to follow those guidelines. Okay. Just a reminder, Market Sim, make sure you participate in the Market Sim calls. If you have questions, email the marketsim@kaisala.com. Market Sim meetings are held on Thursdays, and if anything, submit a city ticket so that way they can capture all your questions in that forum. And then when you submit your questions through city, for this initiative, you can select the release, because this is part of the initiative that's changing. And then also for other Market Sim activities where it's not part of release, you would select the Market Sim option, okay? Just in summary, as I mentioned today, when we started today, we said we want to make sure we give you information on what the requirements are for track 2, followed by the introduction of the new WebLineR application, and then we wanted to focus on the market sim activities, unstructured scenarios to make sure that you have everything you need to engage in this activity. So market sim requirements are listed in the BRS, which we have a link into at the end of this presentation. But in the meantime, start participating so you get yourself acclimated to those changes. And the API will be available mid-April, so we'll announce when that becomes available, okay? Key takeaway from today is the one, I want you to make sure you work with your UAAs to get the proper access to WebLineR. Get access if you don't already have access, but for those that already do have access, we want you to start getting into the system and familiarize yourself. For those that have read writes, submit the AR or overrides based on your access role, view, export data, modify some of the existing data. Like I said, there's a template within the WebLineR application that you can export, update, and resubmit. And then also the filter option. The filter option is very robust. It allows you to really be able to detail information specific to your facility so that if you need to make changes, or just to view, it's available. Lastly, I want to make sure that you guys take the opportunity to attend our release user group, our technical user group, and markets and forum for real-time updates, because dates can change and a lot of good content gets provided in those platforms. Questions are still coming in and we will update those on the slides as they come in. Now, as I mentioned, and also here's information on those platforms that are available. So if you don't have information, we have them on here. And again, some glossary, the impacted business process, operating procedure. Here's one great thing that we have is when you guys run into issues, here's a list of all the error codes. So if you encounter error codes in the WebLineR application, this is one of the nice things is normally these error codes are not listed available. I know a lot of customers have asked for them before, but for this WebLineR, we're going to share this with you guys so that way if you get an error code based on some submissions or based on whatever it is that you see in WebLineR, you'll be able to look at the error message and description and understand what it is that, understand why the error was triggered. So I hope this becomes helpful to you guys to use in the future as you're running into error codes, okay? And again, helpful links we have. So now we've got about 10 minutes left. I want to see if we can jump onto the on the WebLineR application, see if we can do a walkthrough. So hang there for a moment. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, can someone confirm that they can see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Perfect, thank you, Dottie. So here, when you log into WebLineR, you're going to see, as I mentioned, the three different tabs. These are for the external, you can see the three different tabs for the external read, write, read only. For those that have the other role, they won't be able to see this dashboard tab. Once you come in here, as I mentioned, you see the facilities, AR, computational method, assignment, ratings, seasons. You'll be able to see the ratings, ratings analytics. Let's go into the facilities. On here, you have the option to modify your screen. You can change your view to toggle so that way you have these tabs listed on the left side, or you can toggle back to see it in this format. Here you have the option to hide your tabs or your filters by clicking on there, and then you click on the filters. Here are your filter options. Make sure when you do your filter, make sure you save your filters. Here you have the option similar to WebOMS for those who have used WebOMS before. You have the option to modify the columns that you want to see or to hide, okay? And then here you have the ability to export options. This is the facilities tab. So there's plenty of information in here. And again, you have the visibility to see everyone else's information. You just cannot submit changes for other folks, but you can submit changes for your own. The AAR screen, as I mentioned before, if you have the ability to click on these links right here. You can click on the link right there, facility ID, which will open up another tab so you can see that specific information. Going back to the facility tab right here, oops, AR. If you click on, oh, I do see a question, and I'll come back to that one. Facility attributes, which will open up a window where you can see if it's a shared facility, and you can see the attributes here. So the hyperlinks really allow you to see additional information in through a pop-up window. Facility name gives you information on here. If you need to change that, you have the ability to change that. You can change your own, but you can see everyone else. Remember that. And then you can click if you want to create a new one. A new icon right here allows you to create a new one. Yeah, let's go to the next one. Let's see. You can come to there's the rating structure. Go through. Here at the bottom right here, you see the import seasonal ratings from CSV. Again, you can retrieve the templates from here and then import it through these different views, and depending on the screens you're in. So you'll be able to export information from here and upload it back in. So the options, the command buttons are located at the bottom left side. Okay, as I'm going through here, does anyone have any questions while we're on this screen? So that way we can focus on those particular items.
No, I don't see any hands raised to ask questions on the screen. I know we have some questions in the chat that we'll have.
Let's go ahead and go back.
So I did just, yep.
All right, let's go ahead and go
so
back.
the first one I see is Vijay. Is there a standard time frame for the hourly submission, T5 or T10 or so on? And what are the must-have data in the hourly rating submission? And then there's another question as well about, does the facility ID need to be strictly RD, FID, and are there any data standards to follow? Which I know I'm taking these questions back as well to work with SMEs, but.
Absolutely. Let's see if we can have one of our SMEs, maybe, let's see, maybe Sarajo, Nalini, Trisha.
I can help answer that for sure. So we are using the facility RDFID for the submissions. And if, not sure if you're looking at the API or the UI for your submissions, but essentially we are looking for 240 hours of rating data, and the temperature is optional. We also have an is-day flag as well that we will be requesting. Again, it is optional. You can, provide that information if you have it. We have the facility ID, the RDF ID, I mean. We have the rating component, which is whether it is a normal, emergency, E1, E2. Again, all of this has been defined in your FNM file. So, based on how it is defined in the FNM file, we will be accepting the data accordingly. So I hope that answers your question. I wasn't sure if I missed something else.
Peter, does that answer your question? And you can respond, what the time frame? Nalini, do you have the time frame?
The time frame for AAR submissions would be, 240 hours. So it can start from the current hour or the next hour. So, and then for every hour after that. So you can submit something for, the current hour and plus 239, or the next hour and then 239 hours. So that's how we are accepting data into WebLiner.
Perfect. Vijay, any follow-up questions with respect to that? And if you do, go ahead and feel free to add it to the chat or use the hand raise icon. I know we have a few other questions. There was a question earlier, and I didn't want to miss this one, but there was a question earlier regarding slide 75 about adding the new seasonal rating. Is there a way to batch upload ratings and duration, or is this only allowed for one equipment at a time? Nalini, do you want to go ahead and clarify that? Is there a way to batch upload ratings and durations, or is this only allowed for one equipment at a time?
Yes, there is a way to upload seasonal ratings in batches along with updates to durations. So that is available. I think it was on most slide as well where it said import seasonal rating CSV. It's under the rating structure page. So we do have that functionality available.
Thank you, Lenny. And I will expand that. All the questions that are coming in the chat and that are asked in this form, I will include those on the FAQ. And if there are slides that we need to clarify or expand on, we'll definitely do that before we send out the updated presentation. So love your questions. Please keep them coming. Even after this presentation, send it to the email. But if you can put the customer training email address on here on the chat, and then I'll go back to the last slide to show how to communicate with us later. There was another question also from David. He said, what is the expected structure of the CSV file containing seasonal ratings? Nalini, I'm going to punt that one over to your direction.
Could you repeat that? I was trying to read the question in the chat. Sorry, could you repeat that question again?
Absolutely. David asked, what is the expected structure of the CSV file containing seasonal ratings?
So for seasonal ratings, again, we have the facility RDFID. That is our primary identification for the facility. We also have the rating component, which is your normal E1, E2. You will also be required to mention the season. So you will have season ID provided for that. And then we also have the rating value itself as well as the duration. So those are the requirements for the seasonal CSV.
David, let us know if that answers your question or you have a follow-up question to that. There is, I know we're going to be probably going over the training just by a few minutes, but I do want to make sure we cover as much questions. We have another question from Simone. I apologize. Ratings become more accurate as we approach the hour. So is there not a requirement to provide the ratings every hour by a certain time?
Yes, there is. So the requirement is that you provide ratings for every hour for 240 hours. So you come in right now, for example, I would come in on 219 at 10:30 and submit a rating for 11 a.m. plus 239 hours. And then I would come in again at 12 a.m., 12 p.m. and submit again for 240 hours. So it would be a constant cycle that you would be required to submit your most accurate ratings for every hour for 240 hours. I hope that answers your question.
Is that for track 3 or track 1 and 2 as well?
So right now for track 2, when WebLineR goes live in production, that is what we would be expecting when you submit the data to WebLineR. Track 3 is when we have downstream systems consume this WebLineR data, and that would be a separate. But when you're submitting data into WebLineR, it has to be for 240 hours for AAR ratings, unless it's an exception or an override.
Okay, that's for TOP as well, right? Just to confirm, not for the marketing entity. So.
Oh, that's only for the TOP. So your facility has to be mapped to your TOP. Those facilities that are mapped to those TOPs can only submit the data. So that TOP can submit data for those facilities.
Okay.
And that's available in the facility screen in WebLineR. And also in the API, we have a method called the query facilities. So you can query all the facilities that are mapped to a specific TOP.
Does that answer your question? And if you have any follow-up question after, you can definitely send it to us at the customer training at kaiso.com so we can continue those discussions. I do have a few more questions that are coming up, so let's see if we can get through those. But again, just because the training is over doesn't mean that the questions stop here. We want you to submit your questions to our Kaiso training, kaiso.com email so we can continue giving you guys real-time information as you're preparing for this implementation. So Sandman's question from PG&E, for the WebLiner production launch in June, will there be dedicated date and time of the launch, or will it be included as part of the full network model database 135 deployment? I'm going to see if I can answer this one. When we have a definitive deployment date, we'll send out communication, also socialize it in those user forums with the exact date of the deployment. So we'll provide more information as we get closer to that timeline. So be expecting communication in addition to socialization in those user forum. Again, RUG, TUG, Market Sim forum. If you're not already participating in those forums, a lot of good information is covered in that are real time as things are changing. So I encourage you to join the forums. But again, we'll send out communication with these updates on the actual launch date. Last question is from Jack. How long is the CAISO's F&M review before the new rating value is updated? 1 hour, 5 days, or 5 hours, days? For the new rating value in WebLiner, I believe they're updated instantaneously. It's just the rating duration that takes a while. That one is the one that has to go through the full network model update. So that can take, really depending on when the next full network model releases. So it goes through that process, and then it'll be incorporated in the next full network model. But specific to the new rating value, that's instantaneously in WebLiner, but the duration is different. That's the one where it may take time because it has to go through the full network model update, and then will be incorporated in the next full network model implementation or deployment. Does that answer your question, Jack? And let me know in the chat if it does or not, if you have any follow-up questions. Perfect, thank you, Jack. And then Doug, do the season dates range submitted need to match the RCs? If so, what are the RC's transition dates for the 4 season? Let me see if I can get my SMEs to help answer this. Sarajo, maybe? Sarajo, Trevor?
Yeah, the season start and end time are part of the season definition, and that should be consistent across all applications, right? Because the season start and end times are populated from our model, right? So we call it season definition, right? So one season definition part TOP, we have a capability. Everybody can submit their season start and end times based on their season and weather pattern. So that comes through the model in one central storage in our F&M, and it will be transmitted across all downstream applications.
Doug, does that answer your question?
It sounds like we specify what RC start stop dates are, and then they're used accordingly.
Okay. I'm not seeing any more. I know we've gone over about 6 minutes, and I know there's going to be tons of questions later on. So as I mentioned before, definitely send your questions either in the form of a city ticket, because we are tracking those. Also, address your questions in those user forms that I mentioned before. Oh, we have one more question. From Leslie, note that the date ranges, WEC has definitions in the DMP or DPM. So thank you for that, Leslie. So as I mentioned, this training presentation will be updated with all the amazing questions that we've gotten in this call. Again, the original focus of this training was really on the WebLiner. We wanted to make sure we prepare you guys for this new user interface. But in addition to that, I know that there's also questions regarding the other requirements that may go into track 3. And so we do want to make sure those questions are also captured in preparation for when we do implement track 3. And for those that did provide links, Dottie, thank you so much for sharing those links, and also Shashi for including the link for the extension, the tariff extension. As we continue to focus on the market sim, and during this period, we want to hear more questions from you specific to the WebLine-R application as we're developing this tool to make sure that that it's manageable by our customers. Because if you run into issues, we want to make sure we prepare you for when we do go live in April in June. And the user interface and the APIs, like I said, this information that we put out there, we want to make sure you guys have everything you need so you can prepare for Market Sim and then get access to the application. And then all other questions, lastly, will be added to a FAQ, and it's going to be a living FAQ, right? As more questions come in, we're going to continue to update these questions in this FAQ that we're building for you guys, in addition to incorporating it into this presentation, because this right here is what you're going to be using as your, when you need to reference WebLine-R. There is no user guide, so this is going to be in a way, your user guide, right? So we're going to put as much detailed information here to help you really be successful in the Market Sim, and then also the implementation in June. So with that, that concludes our training for today. And I love the participation with all the questions that you guys have provided. And we'll get you some updates within the next 3 days so we can get this all packaged and ready to share via email to all the participants that were on this call. And if you or your folks were not able to attend this call, please email us either at, email us at the customertraining@kisol.com. I'll put a reminder out there later to let you guys know where to send the request to get a copy of this for your colleagues if they weren't able to attend. So that summarizes today's training. Thank you so much, everyone. Dottie, thank you for being my producer. Our SMEs, thank you for helping with the question. And our customers, you, the participants, to be able to ask these amazing questions to help really make this training more effective, because we hear you, we recognize there are some things that haven't been fully vetted. And so this is why we need your help on making sure that we prepare you guys to be successful in this implementation. So thank you, everyone.